Good afternoon and welcome to today's meeting of the Audit and Risk Management Committee. Welcome also to those watching the meeting on YouTube. During the live broadcast, members and officers are asked to please ensure that mobile phones are placed on silent. Only audio from the microphones will be captured on the live stream, therefore please ensure they are switched on when speaking and switched off when you have finished speaking. Minutes will be produced in the usual way, and a recording of the meeting will be available to view on YouTube until such time as the minutes are produced. Agenda Item 1. I'll begin with Agenda Item 1 and call upon Member Services to report any apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies received today from Councillor Harris, and apologies also received from Peter Catchpole, Section 151 Officer, Stephen Beecher, Head of ICT, and Sam King, Head of HR. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Agenda Item 2. Agenda Item 2 is to confirm and sign the minutes of the previous meeting of the 28th July 2025 as being a correct record. Do I have a proposer to approve these minutes? Councillor Booth, thank you. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Mrs French, thank you. Does any member have any comments to make on these minutes? Councillor Booth?
Yes, just a couple of minor typos. Under the minute ARMC6-25, it says, I think it's in the second bullet point, it says quality, diversity, inclusion policy. That should be equality. I think it says quality in another bit, so just needs an equality as opposed to quality.
Thank you. Just need to sign them, don't I? Okay, thank you. Agenda Item 3 is to report additional items for consideration which the Chairman deems urgent by virtue of special circumstances now to be specified. I believe there are none today. Agenda Item 4 is to receive any declarations of interest under the Local Code of Conduct in respect of any items to be discussed at this meeting. If you have anything to declare, please raise your hand. No hands are raised, thank you. Agenda Item 5 is the Draft Auditor's Annual Report for 2024-2025. We now call upon Debbie Hanson of Ernst & Young External Auditors, who is joining the meeting virtually to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So as introduced, this is our auditor's annual report. This is still a draft report at the moment because we are required under the NAO code to issue this report by the end of November. But as we note in the report, our audit of the financial statements is still ongoing at the moment, and therefore we're not in a position to fully conclude the audit and to do our final reporting. So we're presenting this report to you as a draft. We will issue a final version of this alongside our opinion on the financial statements, which we expect to bring to a meeting of this committee in either January or February. The report looks probably quite different than it has in previous years. So there's more information probably than we've included previously, and some more charts and graphs around the key areas of work. The report covers both our audited financial statements at a high-level overview, as well as our value for money work, and that's really the main focus of this report. We will, as I said, bring an audit results report which sets out in more detail the findings from our financial statements audit once that work's been fully concluded in the new year. As we've noted in the report, we expect again to be issuing a disclaimed opinion on the 24-25 financial statements, and that's the position that most local authorities will be in at the moment, and the report does include a bit more detail on that in terms of the guidance issued by the NAO in the LARIG and the process for kind of rebuilding assurance. In terms of kind of some general background, I think obviously it's been somewhat of a challenging year for both ourselves as the audit team, but also the finance team, because it's the first time we've done a full audit for a number of years. Disclaimer opinions were issued on 22-23 and 23-24. In addition to that, there's obviously been changes within the finance team, with the previous chief accountant having left the council, and that meant that different people within the finance team have had to pick up new roles and responsibilities. So I think it was always going to be a challenging year, But what I would say is I think we've built very good relationships with the finance team and we've made good progress, and I think are in a position where we will benefit from that when we do the audit work next year. I'll then take you on to, if I can take you through the report. Like I said, it is quite lengthy, so please bear with me. I will take you through some of the key messages. So if I can take you to page 6, which is the executive summary. That basically sets out, as I said, our work on the financial statements, where we will again be issuing a disclaimed opinion. And that's because, as I said, we don't have assurance over comparative figures or opening balances and some of the in-year movements that are impacted by those. Again, we've given there the context in relation to, the fact that this was always going to be a challenging year, but we have made good progress. Because we're issuing a disclaimed opinion, we actually don't express any comments on going concern in our audit report, and we also don't express any opinion on the consistency of other information. We do, however, look at the narrative report and check that the figures within that are actually consistent with the audited financial statements. In relation to value for money, which is set out on the next page, we've got no matters to report by exception on the Council's VFM arrangements. And members of this committee may remember that last year we actually noted a significant weakness in relation to the arrangements for the preparation of financial statements due to delays in the prior year. So I'm really pleased to be able to report that actually we've concluded that those arrangements are adequate this year. There are still areas for improvement, as we've noted in the report, but I think we really recognise the effort that's gone in from the council side in terms of improving those arrangements and strengthening that process. We also didn't identify any issues from the AGS review. We did note that the AGS should be published alongside the draft statement of accounts by the 30th of June deadline. Due to oversight, that was omitted this year, so we've included a recommendation within the report around ensuring that that document is approved by the council in future years in order to enable that to be published by the deadline. We're not able to issue our certificate alongside the opinion until NAO has confirmed any additional procedures are required. That's the same position that we've had in prior years, and is no reflection on the council's specific arrangements. If I can then take you on to the VFM section, so page 9 of the report, we've noted there the 3 key areas that we're required to look at. So we look at financial sustainability, governance, and arrangements to improve economy efficiency and effectiveness. We noted there, as I've already highlighted, that we did identify a risk in relation to the timely publication of the financial statements, but have concluded that as the deadline was met this year, we're satisfied that that is not a significant weakness. We are likely to still identify accounts preparation and support of the audit as an area next year that we would look at until we really sort of get to a position where the audit is fully supported in all the areas that we'd be looking at. So section 2 of the report provides a bit more detail on the audit of the financial statements. As I've said, that's still in progress, but we have not identified any particularly significant issues through the work that we've done. What we've included for the first time this year, which starts on page 13, is an assessment across some key areas around the effectiveness of the council's arrangements. So I will just take you through those briefly, if that's okay. So we've noted in terms of timeliness of the draft financial statements that arrangements are effective because the accounts were produced by the deadline and published by that date. As I've said, we've made a recommendation around the AGS. In terms of quality and completeness of the draft financial statements, we have noted that as ineffective, and that's because we did identify quite a lot of consistency and typographical and casting errors in the first set of accounts that were published by the end of June. The council did produce a further set of accounts, which were significantly improved, but did still have some disclosure errors that we've identified. So that's clearly an area where we think further focus needs to be given. We do recognise that I think that the council was trying very hard to hit the 30th of June deadline, and that may mean that you weren't able to quite go through all the quality assurance processes that you would have done that would have picked up those errors. So that's a recommendation for next year in terms of making sure that time is built into that programme to enable that to occur. And the delivery of working papers in accordance with the agreed timetable we had. They were sometimes not provided in time in line with the agreed timetable with some delays. And so again, we've noted that as a requires improvement areas. And then quality of working papers is also another area where we've said there's improvement required. In particular, we flagged that the leases working papers were not fully complete, and therefore that's an area we couldn't gain full assurance over. The quality of working papers and timeliness to support key accounting estimates. So that's mainly around pensions and property, plant and equipment and investment properties. That we experienced some delays in getting information from some of the specialists the council engages for those areas. So again, we flagged that as an area that needs some improvement. Access to the finance team, I think, again, we've recognised really the good relationships that have been built, but I think one of the issues we encountered is that the council has a very small finance team, and that means that although the finance team were endeavouring to support us fully in the audit, there were some challenges, particularly if people were on leave, etc., where it was more difficult to get timely responses to answers. Timely responses to our questions. Therefore, again, that's an area we've made a recommendation to the council to review the capacity of the finance team. And I would note that this is probably an area that comes up at many district councils where I think there are significant challenges for finance teams to do a large number of competing priorities that are all business critical. So we're very aware of all the effort that goes into the budget process. We've also flagged within this report the impact of local government reorganisation, which will obviously have a significant impact on the council over the coming months. And again, that will be a drain on the finance team to respond to issues related to LGR whilst also doing the business as usual. We haven't found any material misstatements to date, and so we've identified the volume and identified misstatements as an effective area. We did identify, as I said, some disclosure errors, and so we have identified that as an area for improvement. So on the next page, on page 15, we've included in there this sort of expected status of councils under the LARIG, which is the guidance issued by the NAO. The LARIG is based on the assumption that 22-23 opinions were disclaimed and that 23-24 opinions were issued by the backstop date. What we've noted there at the bottom, the current audit status of the council, and you are actually behind where you would expect to be, and that's very much driven by the fact that we were not able to undertake any audit procedures in 23-24 because of the delays to the accounts. So that means in effect that you are probably 1 year behind where you would ideally want to be in terms of moving to a position of an unqualified opinion ultimately. If I can then take you on to the value for money commentary, which starts on page 17. We've noted there at a high level any significant risks we've identified, which I've already referred you to, any with significant weaknesses, of which, again, I'm very pleased to note there were none this year. But we have made 4 recommendations, which are set out on page 23, all related to the governance sub-criteria. So there's probably just a few issues I wanted to sort of pull out from the detailed commentary. So in terms of financial sustainability, the council's MTFS notes an increasing budget gap over the period of the MTFS, with that gap rising to just over 4 million by 2028-29. We've also looked at the council's track record in delivering savings and noted that in 23-24, only around 51% of the planned savings were delivered. But again, very pleasing to note that in 25-26, the trajectory for that looks much better, with around 89% forecast when we last looked at the data on that. So an improved position on savings, which will obviously be really important to the council in terms of enabling you to bridge those budget gaps in future years. We've also noted that the council maintains reserves, both a general fund reserve, but also a budget equalisation reserve, which is used to help to balance the budget when there's pressures on that. But again, just flagging there the need to ensure that savings are delivered, because use of reserves is not a sustainable strategy, because reserves can only be used once. Therefore, it's really important that the savings and transformation plans that the council has in place are progressing. In relation to governance, I've already talked about the accounts processes there, so I won't go through those again. But on page 23 of the report, we've set out the 4 recommendations. The first one is related to the finance team capacity, which I've already touched on. The second one relates to consideration of the appointment of an independent member to this committee. That's in line with best practice recommended by SIPFA, and certainly what we see at a number of other councils that we audit. We note that the committee has rejected that proposal previously, but we would again recommend that that is looked at, because in our experience we've found that that process can add a lot of helpful challenge to the committee process. We've noted the annual government statement, which I've already referred to. And then the other point we've noted, which I just wanted to draw out, is that there seems to be quite a large number of outstanding internal audit recommendations. So around 20 were overdue from 24-25. There were 29 overdue recommendations from 23-24, which is still not fully implemented, and 2 from 21-22, some of which were higher priority recommendations. So we would again stress the importance of ensuring timely action is taken to address internal audit recommendations. We also noted that internal audit issued 2 limited assurance reports this year, which was contract monitoring for the leisure services and also the debtors and collection agency. We followed up and looked at those areas in a bit more detail, and I think we'd particularly draw out the debtors' recommendations, again, particularly considering the financial challenges facing the council in the future. The importance of ensuring that debt recovery actions are robust, we think is very important. We then, as I've already noted, referred to local government reorganisation, and we've also included a section on a change in terms of fraud and corruption policies. So there's now basically a duty, an offence of failing to prevent fraud, which has been introduced by the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act. The council has reviewed its procedures to ensure that it's compliant with that, but we just wanted to flag that as a new statutory requirement for councils. Then finally, the next section of the report covers the third sub-criteria, which is improving economy, efficiency and effectiveness. And there were not any particular areas that I wanted to draw to your attention in terms of the work that we did there. We were satisfied that arrangements were satisfactory. And then finally, just in the appendices, we've got, again, the recommendations along with management response that I've already taken you through, and obviously the recommendation from the prior year related to the financial statements and the progress made on that. So I said a fairly lengthy report, but hopefully helpful, informative in terms of the work that we've done and the conclusions that we've reached. Very happy to take any comments or questions on the report.
Thank you, Debbie. Can I have a proposer for this report, please? Councillor Booth and a seconder? Councillor Christie, thank you. I'll now open the item for discussion. Please raise your hand if you have any comments or questions. Councillor Booth.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to go over the delays in the sort of working papers being sort of provided. So what sort of timescales are we talking about here with these delays? Is it like a couple of days or is it weeks that you were experiencing?
I probably haven't got the level of detail to give you precise on that, but we generally have a 3-day response time to audit queries agreed with the finance team, and Sharon may correct me if we agreed something different. And so it would have been beyond that. We do have detailed records that kind of show that we have what we call is a portal with the council, where we basically put the requests on our portal. And then that will have a due date, and then we'll monitor against that when information is received. Our audit results report that we'll bring back, as I said, in the new year, once we've concluded the audit, will include some more information on that. Some of the areas were outstanding for longer than others. And as I said on leases, I think that was an area where we basically said, actually, we're not going to complete that work now because the working papers were not complete. So I don't have the details to hand to give you that full information, but we could certainly come back with you with some more stats and data around that, if that will be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the past I've made criticism of yourselves for not meeting deadlines for when, for example, audit should have taken place. It now appears that criticism's on the other foot because we haven't provided the information. But I guess one observation, having worked in financial services, I know sometimes when you request like certain data, it's not always freely available. You've got to go to your MI suite to try and get it created, and actually a lot of that delay is actually just creating the queries to get the information. So I wonder if there's sort of more that can be done about being proactive, giving more sort of advanced guidance on what's going to be required. I know you've sort of got your set thing, but normally the information you're probably asking it's extra to what's being provided already, I would imagine. And that's probably where we normally would expect to see issues in being able to get that information for you.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to the point that we haven't done an audit for 2 years. And as I said, changes within the council's finance team as well. So people were picking up new roles and responsibilities. So maybe had not been asked those questions before. And therefore it was a learning process, I think, for the council's finance team, but also for our team as well. You know, we had some new people in the team as well. So I think this year was very much a kind of learning, getting to know each other. Next year, I think there should be a better understanding in advance of exactly what audit evidence we need for the individual areas. And we can also try and do a sort of split visit so we get information requests out earlier. So I think there's definitely been improvements this year, and I think it was always going to be a challenging year in terms of like just going through an audit for the first time, and some changes probably to our processes as well. And as I said, officers have been very accommodating and have certainly tried to provide the information. So it's not for kind of resistance to providing it. It's just been the challenges, I think, of the size of the finance team, other competing priorities, and the fact that some people are new to the process as well.
Okay.
Councillor Christie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, thanks, Debbie. Going back to your page 15, the progress to full assurance, I fully appreciate, I know it's a situation that a lot of local authorities are in, but given the current audit status of Fenton District Council and the comments you've made there, I just wonder if you've got a view as to will we be able to sort of get back on track to the NAO implementation guidance, or do you think we've got a longer journey to get to full assurance?
I think it will be a longer journey because unfortunately it just means that in effect you're kind of like where our 24-25 audit is in effect 23-24 position in terms of the level of assurance, because we have those gaps in opening balances and comparators, etc. So it does mean you're 1 year behind. The LARIG is very much focused on a risk assessment approach to being able to move to an unqualified opinion. So again, the challenge we have there is we have 2 years where we have no assurance of risk statement, a higher risk than if we've only got one disclaimed year. And then we've got the challenges I've already mentioned, government reorganisation, but the timeframes for that may mean that it's not actually possible for us to get to an unqualified opinion before LGR impacts. So I think all of those complexities make the position more challenging.
Councillor French.
Thank you. Page 23, we rejected last December to have an independent person on the panel. Are we going to reconsider that? Whoever wants to answer it.
Well, I agree with Debbie, obviously, because I brought the paper to you before, but I'm quite happy to bring it to the next meeting or the one after, maybe.
Councillor Booth.
Yeah, I guess just a supplementary to that, to our external auditors, just what is the impact of that? Does that mean that because we don't have that person in role, you're likely to require more assurance in governance and the likes, or is it just something you feel should be done as best practice to get the best out of what this committee is doing?
Yeah, it probably doesn't have any direct impact on our work as the external auditors, but as I said, it's recommended good practice by SIPFA, and I certainly see it at most of my other councils, and certainly the experience that I have is that those independent members, because they're bringing an external an external view, but also kind of like specific expertise in relevant areas, I generally find that to be valuable and to add extra kind of challenge to the audit committee, both to us as external auditors, but also to your own officers in terms of bringing that experience. So our experience is that they are valuable members of an audit committee.
Yep.
You're happy with the recommendation to bring it to the next committee meeting?
I supported it before, so definitely.
Yeah.
I think we should also note at this point that it is still likely to come through as a legislative requirement anyway. So I think last time I said, you know, get ahead of the game and perhaps put it in place so that we don't know how easy it's going to be for us to find somebody to fulfil that post. So the sooner we think about it, probably the better.
Happy with that, members?
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry about the bongs. Any other questions or comments, members?
Yes.
Councillor Benny?
Yeah, I've got several comments that have been mentioned in the report, but I really wanted to put my questions more to officers. I mean, we've got a significant risk on page 25, untimely publication of financial statements, and also we've got a balance carrying forward. We haven't got the figures to carry forward. I'd be interested to know when that is likely, so we can complete the whole story. Because I was on the Audit and Governance Committee for the Combined Authority, and 1 minute we're sitting there, 1 month, sorry, we're sitting there and everything's fine, and the next month we've had from Ernst & Young a letter of intention of that things are in a bad state, and if the information's not right that's before us, we can't make good decisions at the committee if the information's not right. I'm not saying it's not, but it's quite an important thing that we get the balances tidied up and signed off so we can complete the accounts and get back on track. I know Ernst & Young had resourcing issues a few years ago, and I think we struggled to get pulled back from there. But I would like to put that to Peter, but he's not here today. And I don't think these are really questions that should go to the auditor, because it's more to do with the council. And I've got a list of other questions. You know, we've not achieved the savings. We're only 50% of the savings that were forecast. The reserves are down to very near minimal. You know, are we in a good place? With the accounts not being signed off and complete, there's questions here which, to me, there's a lot of things that we need answers for, and really the person who we should be answering those questions to is Peter Catchpole, but he's not here today, because I accept that Ernst & Young only see the bookwork. They don't see, sorry, they see the accounts, they don't see the bookwork of the finer runnings of the council, which Peter could answer. So I've got a list of questions today, and really I was going to ask those to Peter, but I think that it's not fair to ask the auditor, because it's more an internal thing than it is an external thing. But I think next time we have a meeting, we really should have Peter here, because we've got low reserves. We borrowed money, £5 million last May. That was paid back. Is that going to be 2 million this year, or is that going to be 8 million? We don't know. And this is where bad accountancy, or not bad accountancy, incomplete accounts lead to bad decision making, and it doesn't pay a full picture without all the right information. And I think there's some warning signs in here that maybe we should look at. And I don't think it's down to the officers we got here today to answer those questions. I think it's unfair. If I did, I would have given the full notice of that. But I think that just looking at this, I wrote out a whole list of things that, to me, do not seem, I wouldn't say they're wrong, because I don't think there's anything malicious going on here, but it's very easy to go from 1 month being very, very good to the next month where it's not. And there's several things in here that I think we should be asking the officers, and as 101 officer, to see what questions we get back. So I won't ask those questions today for the officers that are here, because I don't think that's fair, nor is it really a case to put those to the auditor. But the report that we've got here does highlight on page 25, 27, 28, 29, in 3 places, several different things that I think that we should be putting to Peter to explain what is going on, so we know that things are right.
Councillor Booth.
Mine's connected, but I wanted to get the external auditor's view on sort of similar item, which is specifically the medium-term financial plan. And obviously you've highlighted the issues of us not necessarily meeting the savings. How much work have you done looking at the projections, particularly around the sort of Fit for the Future 2 programme, and what's contained in that versus where we need to make savings? So have you done sort of an assessment of that to sort of see, you know, are we likely to be on track, even though we're not quite hitting the targets? And what sort of assurance, I guess, have you got in that area? Because, I mean, we're only talking a couple of years, and it does seem to me that the figures for the last couple of years, they're quite small to fill that £4 million gap. You know, I think there's still a lot of work to be done there. So, you know, what is your view on how the council is progressing in that area?
Very good question, one that's quite difficult to answer, actually. So in terms of how much work we've done on the savings, obviously the backward-looking ones in terms of what was achieved last year is relatively straightforward, and as already noted by the committee members, that was only around 50% delivered. What we've looked at for the current year is to check that there are sort of plans underpinning those savings. We've checked to look at kind of how they're being monitored and reported. And that's then given us that higher percentage of around 89% this year at the current forecast for that. So we haven't then gone sort of further underneath that. Because I don't think that's our role to do that. We've been looking basically to say, does the council have arrangements in place to identify and then to manage and monitor the delivery of those savings? So that's what we've looked at, and that has given us the comfort and assurance that they are being monitored and that the projections are looking like they're improved. Absolutely agree with your point around the levels of savings are relatively small. So I think it's around 500,000. And obviously the cumulative gap that you're talking about is 4 million. So the council clearly needs to do other things or increase those levels of savings or income generation to bridge those gaps in future years. Because as noted in the report, you know, the council does have a budget equalisation reserve, which is there to help manage the budget. And the council has been putting money back into that reserve as well when possible. And that's a mechanism of helping to set a balanced budget and manage it. But as I've already noted, you can only use a reserve once. Once it's used to support the budget, then that's been used, and you need something else the subsequent year to either reduce the level of spend or increase income in those areas. I would say that the council is probably in a very similar position to many of the local authorities. The cost pressures that are impacting on you in terms of things like pay and inflation are the pressures that all councils are facing. Your figures are not as large as I'm seeing in some places in terms of the level of future budget gaps, and your reserves position is being managed, I would say, at the moment. But in terms of kind of like the underlying pressures, they will remain. And obviously then, as we mentioned before, local government reorganisation will then have an impact. So I think the key issue, coming back to a point that another member made, is the balances that will be of most interest as LGR occurs are what are your usable reserves balances and what are the council's cash balances. And those are really the critical things. And the difficulty in terms of getting assurance when we've got two disclaimed years is actually how we fill that gap of assurance in terms of what the usable reserves are in relation to the 2 years that we didn't audit, and how do we build up assurance that there's no material misstatement in those usable reserve balances.
Thank you. I think that sort of reiterates a point that we've made. I think what would be useful is if we can have a presentation from Peter next time on how we're going to cover that gap. You know, what are the plans in place? Yeah.
I agree with you, Gavin. I mean, an auditor's report is an auditor's report, but it's history. When this is 12 months, nearly 9 months out of date already. Peter's got his finger on. He usually has his finger on the pulse, so he knows what's going on today. And the warnings are here to me. And Peter would be able to fill the gaps in to give us some assurance that things are better, because I see that we've not got enough. Well, we're heading towards lack of reserves. We're borrowing money. Do we need to borrow more money for a short-term loan next year? I don't know whether that needs to come, whether that's going to be more or less than it was this year. The savings are not what they are. If you look at another area of the report, we lost £362 million on an investment. All these kind of things add up, and I look at this and I think there are maybe not concerns, but I think we need some answers at this committee as to where the council is going on its financial footing.
Any other questions or comments, members? No? There are no further speakers, therefore the recommendation is for the Audit and Risk Management Committee to note the content of the report. Please raise your hands if you disagree with the report. There are no raised hands, therefore the content of the report is agreed. Thank you, Deborah, for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye. So just carry on. Yeah. Agenda item 6 is a Treasury and Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy Mid-Year Review for 25-26. I now call upon Sian Warren, Chief Accountant, to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to review the Council's Treasury Management activity for the first 6 months of 25-26 and provide the members with then an update to matters that are pertinent for the future updates to the Council's Treasury Management strategy. I hope you've read the report, and it does outline some of the things that you've mentioned earlier in this meeting, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Oh, 1 second. Thank you, Sean. Can I have a proposer for the report, please? Councillor Mrs French and a seconder. Councillor Christie, thank you. Now open the item for discussion. Councillor Benny?
Thank you. If there's anything here that's not right, I really would have directed this towards Peter, and normally I would give you advance notice if I've got questions I thought were a bit tricky. And it does say in here that we borrowed £5 million last May. In your opinion, would you expect that we'd need to borrow money next May? And if so, would that figure be higher or lower than the 5 million? If that's not something you feel you can answer, I'll more than happy wait to save that for Peter.
Yeah, I can confirm that we are looking to do short-term borrowing in February, and the main reason for doing that is for the cash flow purposes to get us to the 1st of April, which will then where we get a lot more of the government grants in at that time, and then we pay it all back. So it's not long-term borrowing, we're doing short-term borrowing just for cash flow purposes.
Councillor Booth?
Following up on the point Councillor Benny made about the loss of capital from the property fund, I mean, I don't know how many times I raised concerns about investing in property funds, and dare I say it, looks like I was, correct in my concerns. I mean, I guess one question is, it was £362,000 capital loss, but did we get anywhere near that with the investment returns, or was it all completely lost? I mean, normally with investments, they talk 5 to 10 years to make your money on them. So.
Yes, we did in fact through interest receive £260,000 over the period of time. Yeah, but ideally, obviously, which would have been in for 5 to 10 years, but that didn't quite work out in this case.
And I'm assuming from the bullet point underneath that, we could be looking at a similar situation with this other property fund. Is that correct?
Yes, you're correct, but we had a meeting last week with them, and it's confirmed that there will be a merger. But we will be going across. They are taking in local authorities, which they weren't in the other fund. They just wanted pension funds.
So the question that then raises is, have we got any other investments in sort of similar portfolios where we could, be at risk of having capital loss? Have we done an assessment regarding that to sort of check if there's any risks at all?
I can confirm that the property fund that we've still got is the only one of the investments that we have. All our other investments are with our local bank or the DMO, central government.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, members? No. There are no further questions, and therefore the recommendation is for the committee to note the report. Can you please raise your hand if you disagree with the report recommendations? There are no raised hands, therefore the recommendations are agreed. Agenda item 7 is the internal audit plan for 25-26 progress report. I now call upon Deborah Moss, Head of Internal Audit, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this is just the standard report that you get each quarter. The purpose of the report is to give you a progress report against the audit plan, to advise you of any amendments that we've made against the plan, whether that's adding any additional audit engagements in or taking any out, and to advise you of any significant internal control or governance issues that have arisen. I'm also required to give you, and you've got that at the back, the tracking information for the implementation of audit actions. I won't go through the whole thing, but I just draw your attention to a few things. So the draft plan came to committee in July 25, and at that point we did have an issue with resourcing in the team. It has been partially resolved in the sense that we've recruited a permanent person, but they are replacing a full-time person now with a part-time person. So we have a vacancy of 0.4 of FTE left. And that, what to do with that is still undecided. It's only recently that the permanent person has gone through their probation, so we're now at the stage of looking at that 0.4 again and trying to decide what to do with it. So I can't give you any more information on that. I'm mindful of the fact that the plan was draft at that stage. I haven't made many changes to it apart from to drop some of them into reserve, and I've removed the LATCO audit on the basis of I've been advised that the future of the LATCO is undecided at this stage, so it wasn't of value perhaps to do it at this stage. We've completed, I think, 5 audits are listed on here, and you've got the actions and the opinion for each of those that I hope you've probably had a look through. And we've got 3 more that are almost finished as well, so they'll be coming at the next one. So there's an overview at 2.5 that tells you all the audits that we plan to do and the status for each of those for you to look at or comment on. I've listed all the audit activities that we plan to do, plus now at the advice of external audit, we will be looking at some more fraud work as well and reviewing the policy again. And the last bit, the Appendix B, will be on the outstanding actions. I would like to ask committee whether they're happy with the stats on the presentation of the outstanding actions, or whether you would prefer to have a table of all the outstanding actions so you can see what they are rather than the figures. It'd be quite useful to know which you prefer. I'm just carrying on what has been done before, but it's entirely up to you what you'd prefer to have delivered. Any questions?
Thank you, Deborah. May I have a proposer for the report, please? Councillor Booth. And the seconder? Councillor Christie. Thank you. The item is open for discussion. Councillor Benning?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. On the report, reports that you've got to do, you've got port management here. I was portfolio holder for the port for quite a while. In view of the fact that we've had 2 ships stuck in the River Nene south of the swing bridge at Sutton Bridge, and we've had 2 boats collide out at sea, and we've also had in the last couple of months 2 ships stuck on the sandbar. One was there for several days. I mean, this isn't Wisbech Port, which is our land, which is there, but we are the statutory harbour authority for this. It does seem that we have got a very, very high number of incidents that are happening at the port. I would be very interested to see. I mean, you've got that listed as a high risk. I mean, to me, the port probably has the highest risk to the council of anything that we do. You could rate a dust cart off, you could have somebody injured, we'd be covered by insurances. But a lot of the port side, or the harbour authority, we have no control over, we can't insure. And once our pilot puts foot on a boat, they are responsible for that ship. And looking at the number of incidents that we've had over what's comparatively short time, I would be very interested to see what the report came back to that. I think that there's a lot of the risks that are there. I mean, the Statutory Harbour Authority is nothing but a drain on the council for nothing, but it's a legal obligation that we have to run the authority. But it seems that at the moment we're having quite a few incidents with getting the ships in and out, and I think that is something that really could be a potentially very, very big risk to the council. Is that something you'll be looking at, the number of incidents that we've had with the ships in the channel?
I can tell you that the reason it was put on here was not for that reason. It was suggested by the director because I think they felt that there should be more compliance auditing done in that area just to get a general assurance of how things are working, because there's been a lot of staff turnover and issues, incidences, all sorts of things. So it was just to get an overall feel for that. She thought that would be of value. I can take your point on board though and discuss with them what we can do to tweak terms of reference as such to incorporate something like that, or even looking at the health and safety, the resourcing, the training, all that type. We can skew it that way instead.
I know the port has had a fairly high turnover of OICs. Yeah, I mean, we've got a new harbour master. I've never met him. I wasn't portfolio holder at the time from there. But we've had problems with pilots. Now, the pilots are the person who's responsible for those ships. Now, those ships cost millions of pounds, and we are responsible as the Salisbury Harbour Authority. And the minute that pilot steps foot on the ship, I've said many times, I think this is probably the biggest risk to a council, because that's not our business. We've been stuck with it, but I think that that's something that we really should be looking at to make sure that things are as safe as we can get them.
Councillor Booth, did you want to come in about the harbour?
Yeah, I think just on that one, it does sound like it's a very specialist area. I'm just wondering if you'd have the skills in team to do that, or is that an area where we need to maybe look for external expertise to help in doing a review of that? Because yeah, you can do the compliance thing, look at the legislation app. I think what we're talking about here is more the operation, isn't it, Councillor Benny, and the day-to-day operations. So I'm just wondering if that's an area that we need to look at for specialist expertise.
Well, I think that's a very valid point, something we'd have to consider, because we need to be competent to be able to audit it, certainly. I think we can do up to a certain point, like I say, the training, and do we have the full capacity, the rotoring, that type of the health and safety issues that they've got there. But I think I will have to double check this, but I thought that an independent report on the port was done each year anyway, but I might be telling you the wrong thing, but I will double check that.
Yeah, to Councillor Booth's point, one of us portfolio, we had a chap called Chris, Captain Chris Hallam, I think was his name. We used to go to him for specialist marine advice, and also we used to use there was a I can't remember, is it the maritime and marine something or other. We used to go to those for advice as well, and they are very much, their job is marine processes. We used those before, and for something like this, I think Councillor Booth is absolutely right. Maybe some specialist advice on this, because I think the number of incidents that have happened over what is comparatively a short time, I think this needs looking at, to be truthful.
Christy?
Yeah, I'll come in there. So as the current portfolio holder for ports, yes, I agree with Deborah. The item on here is very much about the governance or management governance of the organisation. With the incidents that have happened, they do really sort of come under the risk assessments from an operational perspective, and they are being investigated, and risk assessments are certainly being updated and agreed around those things as well. I know with the recent incidents that there are reports that are being produced that on what the causes were, and what the any changes that could be made to improve the situation there as well. But I think that, as you said, what you've got on here is very different from the operational aspects of what's happening within the ports there as well. I've got a couple of other questions as well. Is that right if I go on to those now, or do you want to do more? No. Yeah.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, I did actually receive an email from the Port of Sutton Bridge last week, which I did send on to the portfolio holder and the chief exec. There just seems to be so many incidents happening, and I'm fearful that this is going to end up costing the council a lot of money through lack of business. Ships stuck out in the wash, ships not able to get in and unload, which obviously time is money. More really concerned that is it going to start costing the council financially?
Councillor Christie.
Do you want to move on to the other questions there? Yeah, I've got a couple actually. Well, the first one is regarding the cyber security. Do you have an idea of a date as to when that might be coming to us? Because the only concern I've got is that with recent activities, there's been a lot of cyber incidents recently, especially involving local authorities, and it'll be very, I think, timely for us to get some assurance around those.
So I spoke to the auditor this morning about that. She has finished all the testing on it. It's going to get reasonable assurance. I think there's still some outstanding items from the last audit that were not fully completed. Nothing particularly major, but in her eyes, everything seems fairly well controlled. We've gone through all the annual exercises and all the checklists for the PCSN and all those. They've done all those. So as far as she's concerned, it's fairly okay.
Right.
But that will come to you at the next meeting. Yeah.
And then the last one is regarding the audit on FACT as well. I suppose I have to declare my interest as chairman of FACT as well. So I know that's moved now to planned, whereas it was not started before. So
Yeah, it's all right at this point.
Did you? Any other questions? Councillor French.
Thank you. Item 15 on this list is overtime and it's high and not started. Can you explain what your concerns are about that?
Yes, this came up as a corporate issue that's been discussed by the management team because they were trying to cut the expenditure on overtime. So they have, there's a report going, I believe, this week to CMT to discuss overtime options and how they will reduce and control it. And this is an audit that we hope will be of value if we back end it to the end of the year to see that those actions have been introduced and are effective. Previously, it was just going to be a quick compliance audit of our overtime against the overtime policy, just to support CMT with their initiative. But I think it's going to be widened slightly now in light of any options and any approvals that get done this week.
Councillor Booth.
I guess that does raise a question, though, is why it's a high risk, because it sounds it's more about the management of overtime. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a high risk item. There might be a high amount of overtime, but it doesn't mean the controls aren't working. So,
no, I think it's high in the sense of the inherent risk, but it's an unacceptable level of expenditure against it. So therefore, it's been raised as an issue, and that's basically why it is on the plan. That's the rationale for it, but it's.
Councillor Benny.
so just come back. I mean, but my view on that would be that's the quantum as opposed to what the controls are. Does that necessarily automatically make it a high risk item? But that's just an observation.
I think given some of the discussions that have taken place, it was high just because it has been raised as issues,
right.
Not just the spend. I think there's little assurance over it and in need of looking at, let's put it that way. So I think that's why it is being looked at, and that's why the assurance there will be of value, hopefully.
Councillor Benny. Councillor French.
Thank you. A bit confused on this overtime. Is it the likes of, I don't expect you to, give me a definite answer, but is this the fact that it might be overtime for refuge collection, overtime for events? I'm a bit confused. So most people are on set hours. I'm just concerned, where is the issue with the overtime?
I can't really tell you that until we've done the audit, really. I gather it's probably across a lot of services. I don't think it's pinpointed to one in particular. I know a couple of the issues, but I don't think this is probably the meeting to discuss individual things.
We've also got here local government reorganisation. Truthfully, I see this as a bit of an open checkbook because the costs of this have not been thought through, and the amount of money that we are going to have to spend to dissolve the council, to be prepared to dissolve the council, have plans. There's a lot of work got to be done here. I know you can't say until you've done the audit, but it's got a residual score of 12 on here for local government reorganisation, and I see that as being a very big, not say a risk to the council. It's something that we should be aware of because of the cost. It's on page 85.
I think you might have gone on to the next item, Councillor.
Have I crept onto that one?
Yeah.
You're looking at the risk
Sorry.
register, maybe, because it is on there.
Sorry. In that case, I'll save that till we get there. Yeah.
So members, earlier on, Deborah asked about how she's laying out the outstanding audits. Do you have an answer as to how you'd prefer to see them, or are you happy with how they're straight?
Yeah, I think the the table's shown the results from the individual audit is probably the best we've ever had presented. It tells us what the high level summary is and what the actions are, which I've been asking for years for something like this, to be honest. So thank you very much for including that. I think that's great. I think that the bit regarding the outstanding actions is a little bit confusing because we're talking over multiple years, but I guess looking at it, you do actually sort of give the summary of what it is. So I think it's okay. It's just the fact we've got so many over so many years, it probably is a little bit confusing to read. Normally you'd probably have just the previous year, hopefully, and that would be it. But because we've got multiple years, it does complicate it, I think. So I think we've got to bear with it for the time being to see how it develops personally. So.
And I think that's sorry. I think I'm just going to reply. I think that's a valid point. I mean, it's just as annoying for me to prepare as it is for you to read it, I guess. Let's hope they do drop off now, and we just end up with ones that are more timely this year and last year. It's just whether you wanted to see what those actions were, because I'm just mindful of the fact that apart from me writing some of the pros underneath, you're blind to which aren't being done, and you might have an opinion on some of them.
Councillor Booth.
Yeah, I guess if you concentrate on what the high risk items are, possibly medium risk, I guess low risk items we wouldn't be so worried about. Yeah, we need to concentrate our efforts on what's going to have the most impact to the council, I would have said. So.
There are no further questions or speakers on this? No. Therefore, the recommendation is for the committee to consider and note the activity and performance of the internal audit function. Please raise your hand if you disagree with the report recommendation. Is your hand raised? No. Okay. There are no raised hands. Therefore, the recommendations are agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 8 is the Corporate Risk Register review. And I'll pass you back over to Deborah to present this report.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so Stephen can't, he normally presents this. He couldn't be here today because he's dealing with an AI seminar in Cambridge, I understand. I will tell you that the standard first part of the report is fairly static, and then he usually puts a paragraph in there to tell you whether or not there's been any changes to either the scores or any new risks that have been added in or any taken away. For this time, whilst the group has reviewed all of the risks and the mitigation, none of the scores have changed and there have been no additional risks added. The bits in green that we have highlighted are the new actions or developments that have taken place in that area. So they might next time move over to mitigation where that fits. But for the moment, they're in the final column, just marked green because that's to draw your attention to those. So assuming you've looked at those, do you have any questions or do you want me to go through them?
Please, can I have a proposer for the report? Councillor Booth and a seconder. Councillor French, Mrs. French, sorry. The item is open for discussion if you've got any questions. Councillor Benny, you had a question?
Yeah. Local government reorganisation. It doesn't feature very heavily in this as a risk, but that's upon us. We're already setting ourselves down that road, and I see that this is going to be a big financial cost to the council just to prepare for this, and I really wonder if it's getting the right rating on it, really.
To be honest, when this risk was added to the risk register, I do remember there was quite a lot of discussion about whether or not it should be its own risk or whether it just automatically impacts on the other risks that are already present on the register. But it was felt due to its importance, it needed its own line, so we did put one in. I don't know really what more I can say. Every time there's a risk that's that's discussed that links with LGR, we have tried to add those in as sub-risks under the LGR table. So hopefully we're picking those up as we go along and trying to address them as best we can.
Councillor Booth.
Sorry, I just had a question on page 79. You've got this thing, Sean might be able to answer this one, but it's about the no PO, no pay. So I'm assuming that's no purchase order, no pay. So are we saying that we've got instances where we're asking for payment to suppliers and they haven't raised a purchase order? And if so, I guess what's the impact going to be to suppliers, particularly if they're local tradesmen? Yeah, if you could give us a bit more background on that.
Okay. Yeah, the council should be doing raising purchase orders for any service and supply that we require, but it's never been quite enforced in this way that we want to do it. So with us moving Aggresso to the cloud, we've used this as an opportunity to make sure that everybody is doing that, plus with the same idea of LGR, that other local authorities are doing it, and therefore we need to be in the same way, working in the same way as they are going forward.
So I guess it's more of a cultural issue with maybe some departments not having raised them in the past, and I guess changing that culture, it shouldn't really impact suppliers if they're following the correct process. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Any other questions? Councillor French, sorry.
Thank you. I did actually think all departments raised purchase orders. Certainly the events team, they're exceptionally good, because I ordered some toilets last week, and once we agreed the price, a purchase order was actually raised, and that's for the Christmas market.
Question: it's not a change to the register, but it's about fraud. I mean, every business, every organisation is open to fraud wherever there's money involved. I don't think we have a problem with staff pinching money or anything like that. That is not where fraud is. The fraud really to us comes in terms of people claiming 25% single person tax relief in their council tax when they're not entitled to it. I know we've got a representative who works with ARP, and I know that Councillor French has told me that there are people that she's taken things that we know that people have been reported for claiming this, which they shouldn't do, and it never seems to be followed up. I mean, that's actually quite serious fraud. I know this works with ARP, which is a partner, to get on top of this fraud, but really it's costing us money. And is there anything we can do to tighten that up so that we stop the fraud that's going on?
I think if you've got individual cases that you want to refer to ARP and you're not getting any response back from them, then come through me and I will do that. As a council, we do sign up for the NFI initiative, and the one in December, we are data gathering all the SPD information and the election information, and there will be a cross-match between those two data sets. So SPD will get picked up for the most part on that, and each case will be investigated based on its risk assessment.
Councillor French.
Yeah, thank you. Just to pick up on what Councillor Benny said, unfortunately, because there's so many, and the majority of fraud is the 25% discount. Over last year, I can't remember the exact figures, I think it was across all the authorities that use ERP, it was something like £5 million recognised, 2.5 million locally. So they certainly are on the ball, and I will say in September, ERP won an award.
Any other questions, members? Councillor Booth?
Yeah, it's just regarding, was it page 91? So I think I've asked this in the past, but I see that we're sending officers on training with the APM. I think back in my day when I did qualification on project management, it was Prince 2, but I don't think that's used so much now. But have we got a defined project methodology so that they're using? Because I see that we've also got some new project software introduced. I'm assuming we're not using Microsoft Project, for example.
I do know the answer to this. I just don't know if it's going to come to me. We do have project. There is something out. There's two things, and they were going to drop one. Sian, can you remember? Because transformation used one of them. I'll have to get back to you. But yeah, they do definitely use one piece of software.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not entirely sure what these qualifications will be used for. We're looking for people across the council, so we've got a lot of people. I guess that's to set us up for LGR as well and the Inspire.
Yeah.
So we've got 13 already and places for another 8. So I think it's just getting people so that we are good at project management.
I guess though the one part of that was about have we got a defined project methodology? Because yeah, you can go on these courses. I remember doing Prince 2. There were so many steps you had to follow; it just wasn't practical to use. But a lot of corporations have their own sort of project methodology. They'll probably have like what they would call project office, someone that sort of oversees the management of projects across different areas. So, and yeah, I've asked the question. I'm not sure if I've ever got like, a fully satisfactory answer, but I think what I've been told is we do control projects, but have we got it defined? Is there like a project management process guide, for example?
Would you mind if I just have a look at that and
Yeah.
come back to you next,
Yeah.
maybe next meeting, bring back a verbal on that?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
Hi. With the changes to employment law coming in, and workers getting rates from day one, how much of an impact do you think that will have on the council? Because you never know whether anybody's any good until the day you sack them or the day they leave. And you could end up with people who now need more management and more time spent with them. Is there any taken into account whether for additional resources for taking staff on and with the changes coming through in the legislation? I would have directed that to Sam, but she's not here today. If that's one that you can't answer, then we'll leave that for Sam.
I don't think that is my place to answer that one. I think probably you do need to direct that to Sam. To be honest, that's a bit too specialist for me, I think. I can certainly take it back and ask her though.
Any other questions? Go on.
An observation, I guess. No change in schools. Are we comfortable that that's the case? When it's come before this committee, I've asked that question in the past. Unfortunately, we've got Stephen here. We've got quite a lot of people not here today. I do wonder if we should have carried on with the meeting, but I think it's mainly for Ernst & Young, wasn't it? But because yeah, we've got a lot of questions sort of unanswered that we're going to carry forward. But that's my challenge for the project. Sorry, for the risk register. If there's no change in score, are we doing proper assessment?
Okay. I think that's a fair question. We just looked through it and decided that there wasn't anything that had affected it in a significant way to affect the scores. So they therefore, on the basis of that, they remained the same. I think once we've had the final accounts through, possibly we do need to revisit it again just to check those scores. And there's nothing to say that the score we put initially was correct either. It is quite subjective. So, but point taken, we will look at those again.
Thank you. There are no further speakers. Therefore, the recommendation is that committee to approve the latest corporate risk register. Please raise your hands if you disagree with the report recommendations. There are no raised hands. Therefore, the recommendations are agreed. Agenda item 9 is the Audit and Risk Management Committee work plan. Are there any questions on this? We've obviously, sorry, Deborah.
No, sorry, I was thinking that was me as well because I wrote it, but carry on.
No, members will note that the February date has been moved to the Tuesday the 17th of February, and there will be a further discussion on the March meeting date in due course. Any questions, Councillor Booth?
Well, I'm just going to have to give my apologies because that's a work day, and I've got no holiday. I've got it all allocated, so I won't be able to attend. So.
I think it's down to the external auditors. Is that correct? Did you want to come in, Deborah, with that?
Yeah. I was just going to say that we do know we're waiting for Peter to also confirm as well. So it's not, just as long as everyone's aware, it's not a definite date at the moment. It's just a proposed one.
That's Christie.
Yeah, sorry, Debbie, you saying that, you said that the cybersecurity one, was gonna come to us in the next meeting in February. I didn't see that on the list there.
The cybersecurity internal audit report
Yeah.
will be part of my progress report.
Oh, it will be, okay.
So you'll get the assurance and the actions that have fallen out of that report within the progress.
I was just going to ask, 'cause I know before we've talked about that, and with the sensitivity of cybersecurity, is doing that in closed session as well. I don't know if it's going to go into any detail.
I don't know that it will need to be, but we'll have a look at that as I write the report. If it does, we can do it outside here.
Thank you, members. The work plan is therefore noted for information. Agenda item 10 is items of topical interest. There are none. Agenda item 11, items in which the chairman has deemed urgent under item 3. There are none. Therefore, this marks the end of the meeting. Thank you, everyone.